If you've clicked on this video, you probably know. But you might not, so I'm gonna tell you anyway. The Week Before has come out, a FNAF interactive novel that takes place the week before the events of FNAF 1. You play as the phone guy, whose name is Ralph, as he works his last few days as the night guard. Ralph is a good dad, and we see a lot of interactions between him and his daughter Coppelia. And I have watched at least 4 people on YouTube start to read through the book, stop at the first instance of her name, go, that's a unique name, immediately Google it, and find out that it is a reference to a story about an animatronic who passes as a real girl for some time. So, many people are wondering, has Scott once again given us another robot child in this franchise, because there is just no way that name is a coincidence. My name is Candy Bunny, and let's dig into FNAF's robot child problem. This video has minor spoilers for the Week Before. Let's go through the original story and famous ballet that the name Coppelia is almost undeniably taken from, then look at the Week Before and what we know about Coppelia and make our theories from there. Let's start with the very first appearance of Coppelia in 1816 in the short story by E.T.A. Hoffman called Der Sandman, or The Sandman. It is the very first written work ever that tells us the fairy tale of the Sandman, and like all old fairy tales, it is way darker than the popular retelling now. In that story, there actually is no Coppelia. Instead, there is Coppelius, an evil scientist. Why are we starting here if there's no Coppelia even in this story? Because it's what the ballet Coppelia is based on. If you want a long and beautifully produced video to summarize The Sandman by E.T.A. Hoffman and give you some insight into its meaning, check out The Sandman is Scarier Than You Think by Tale Foundry. I highly recommend. Everything that comes out of this channel is so haunting and beautiful. They have a full summary and analysis in that video. So, as I said, in The Sandman, Coppelius is an evil scientist who traumatizes the main character Nathaniel. Nathaniel believes Coppelius to be the Sandman, a fairy tale his wet nurse told him about a monster who steals children's eyes and feeds them to its children on the moon. Coppelius is an alchemist creating machinery with Nathaniel's father and threatens to steal Nathaniel's eyes when he's a little kid to put in his creation. Nathaniel's father stops Coppelius, but his father is later found dead. Nathaniel is a grown man and has mostly moved past his trauma and is engaged to a girl named Clara, who frankly is a really great girl, until one day Nathaniel meets a merchant with a strong Italian accent named Coppola. Though Coppelius wasn't Italian, they look so much alike that Nathaniel is convinced Coppola is him and that he is also his personal demon, the Sandman, come to spell his downfall. Nathaniel is persuaded this is not true when a friend called Professor Spallanzani says Coppola has never been in the country before and it can't be Coppelius. And I'll just read from the Wikipedia on this part. Nathaniel writes a poem about Coppelius destroying his happiness and love, in which Coppelius appears at his wedding to touch Clara's eyes and then throws Nathaniel into a circle of fire. After he emotionally reads this poem to Clara, she tells him to throw the insane poem into the fire. Nathaniel's frustration with this leads him to call her an inanimate, accursed automaton. Thank you, Wikipedia. And their relationship is strained. Nathaniel meets Professor Spallanzani's daughter, Olympia, who is absolutely perfect, and he falls in love with her and ends it with Clara to pursue her. But it is revealed after their relationship gets more serious that Olympia is a robot who is built by the professor and Coppola, who is indeed Coppelius. Nathaniel goes insane and is locked in an asylum for a time. But he recovers and reunites with Clara, and the two of them attempt to repair their relationship and get married again. Until one day, they climb a tower together, and Nathaniel goes to look through a spyglass that he had purchased from Coppola back when he was still disguised as a merchant. And through it, he sees Clara's eyes as burning, spinning orbs, and is convinced that she's a robot and flings himself from the tower. Now for Coppelia, the girl with the enamel eyes, which is the name of a much more lighthearted ballet that is based off of E.T.A. Hoffman's book. In this story, the main guy, Franz, sets aside his fiancée Swanhilda to pursue Coppelia, who is made by Dr. Coppelius. So Dr. Coppelius makes Robot Girl again, but the ballet names her Coppelia. It's revealed Coppelius has many wind-up dolls like this, and that the doctor wants to bring Coppelia to life, but needs a spirit, and plans to use Franz's spirit. Swanhilda rescues him, and they live happily ever after. So FNAF alarm bells are going off for both of these stories, and I'm honestly torn between which ones Scott might be harkening back to more. But one thing is clear, Scott definitely intended to call our attention to the story of an animatronic girl. Coppelia is not a common name. Even if Scott had decided he really wanted Phone Guy to be Dutch, Coppelia is not a common Dutch name. If this book came out 10 years before, it would be possible Scott somehow found the name and thought it was cool. But now, a decade later, there is no chance he picks a name so obscure without knowing that it's a reference to the Sandman and the ballet Coppelia. Scott cannot pick a name that harkens back to a literal animatronic and not know that the community is gonna tear that to shreds. So Scott wants us to realize that Faux Guy's daughter is a robot, right? Well, there's not much more in the Week Before that supports this. Coppelia, the daughter, seems to be a very normal little girl. She sleeps, she eats, but obviously those things don't exclude someone from being a robot in the FNAF universe, because in the Silver Eyes, the main character is a robot who does all of those things so convincingly that no one, including herself, knows that she is a robot. Ralph seems to think his daughter is a fully real person, and Coppelia doesn't give us any indication of being a robot. And here's a spoiler, but in some of the endings, the animatronics seek out Coppelia in a way similar to how they seek out Abby in the movies, seemingly trying to kill her or even turn her into one of them. Neither of those things would make a ton of sense if she was already an animatronic. So if it wasn't for the fact that her name is Coppelia, we wouldn't be having this discussion at all. So what do we do with this name? Is Scott telling us she's a robot, or is he just trying to drive us all collectively insane and wreak absolute havoc? I think there are 3 ways you could go with your interpretation. The first being that Scott is an enormous troll. As Rytoast would say,
I say it like once a month, but Scott, when I get my hands on you.
But yeah, one interpretation is that Scott hates this community, or that Scott has the greatest sense of humor ever, and put it in here to drive us mad and make Matt Pat come out of retirement. The second is that Coppelia is meant to be a robot in the stories. And let's take a quick look at what we know about Coppelia to see if there's anything to back this up. She loves to read and play Sega Genesis. Ralph loves to give her little gifts. Coppelia is 11, she's Ralph's daughter, and he seems to be her sole caregiver. She goes to school. She loves bacon, but honestly I think Scott just loves bacon because that was also a characterization of Oswald in Into the Pit. Ralph feels lucky and proud to have Coppelia as a daughter. The week before also seems to go out of its way to point out her very human behavior. The first scene we see her in, she's asleep and she's drooling. Ralph explicitly in the story or in his memories that he tells us in the story has seen her drool, sleep, eat, laugh, have bags under her eyes, cry, and throw up. Usually activities that indicate that someone is human. But given that we know from the Silver Eyes that a robot child can be beyond convincing to the point of not knowing themselves that they are a robot, this very obvious humanization could almost be wrapping back around to point towards her being a robot. The book is making such a point to point out her human abilities. It sort of makes you wonder, like if someone were to go on and on about how very normal their teeth are and how not strange looking their teeth are, or how not freaky or alien at all their teeth are, you would start to wonder if they had normal teeth or if they were just saying that to make you think they had normal teeth. But this is really the only thing I could find that might cue you into her being a robot, and more so it cues you in the opposite direction. If you believe that Coppelia's name is hinting that she's a robot, I think you have to believe that there's more Phone Guy or Coppelia story coming later, because there's no narrative or thematic payoff to that thread. I mean, she's a robot, so what? It didn't have a big reveal in the week before, it didn't solve some big question that we've had. There has to be more coming where her being a robot will mean something, or else it's pretty mid storytelling. My biggest concern with Coppelia or anyone else being a perfectly convincing non-possessed or possessed child robot is that right now we only know of one man who has the level of skill to make an animatronic like that, Henry, the father of Charlie Emily. And it seems like Phone Guy has not met Henry, or if so, he doesn't really remember him, because in FNAF 2, when he says he's gonna contact the owner of Fredbear's Family Diner, he doesn't seem to know much about the owner. Henry was one of the 2 owners.
We're going to try to contact the original restaurant owner. I think the name of the place was Fredbear's Family Diner or something like that. It was closed for years, though. I doubt we'll be able to track anybody down.
If Henry had built him a robot version of his daughter, you'd think he'd remember the guy. Then again, Ralph does seem to ignore his own memories as a coping mechanism, which helps him return to Freddy's to complete his 5 nights. Ralph certainly does not have the skill to make an animatronic daughter himself. He seems to be very average at repairing the robots, like when Bonnie's head comes off and he has to reattach it. So if Ralph can't make Coppelia bot, and Henry isn't around to make Coppelia bot, it seems like there probably can't be a Coppelia bot. So now for the third thing that Coppelia's name could mean besides her being a robot or the meanest troll ever. She could be pointing us to more subtle themes from the Sandman or from Coppelia. And because I want to keep my sanity intact, this is my absolute favorite of the 3 options. The short story The Sandman parallels FNAF in many ways. Twice in that story, 2 men build an animatronic, one of whom is clearly an evil man, Coppelius, and one of whom seems more well-intentioned and is just curious about these darker sciences, Nathaniel's father and Professor Spallanzani in the story. That reads a lot like the relationship between William and Henry, who both had a hand in the creation of the animatronics in FNAF. But the big theme that I think the Sandman brings to the table is that once Nathaniel is exposed to the horror of the animatronic Olympia, he is haunted by it and unable to distinguish what is real and what is an animatronic until it drives him insane and kills him. At the end of the story, Clara, who he believes to be a robot, is revealed to be a normal woman who goes on living after him. But he is so haunted by Olympia and Coppelius that he is driven mad, not knowing what is real or not. This slots in great with the week before. We see how Ralph's encounters in the night haunt him during the day and during his dreams, even when we get an ending where he makes it home safe and lives. Everyone we know who encounters the animatronics in their supernatural form has their entire life consumed by them, either by obsession or a sense of duty or serious injury. Ralph, Bronwyn, Mike, bite victim Jeremy, Henry, William Afton. But perhaps when Scott picked the name, he meant for us to draw more from the ballet, which, after all, is more directly related, being named Coppelia. The big reveal of Coppelia is not just that she's a doll, but that the dolls must come to life, powered by a human soul, and that the evil scientist Coppelius wants to use Franz's soul. I mean, I don't think there's anything more to say there. Animatronics powered by souls? That's FNAF. That's FNAF. So I have solved nothing in this video, but I hope you all will discuss in the comments if you think you know which of the 3 possibilities it is, or if you think I've missed some major points of evidence for any of the theories, because full disclosure, I don't have the book. I've been trying to get every page of it I can by watching other people's read-throughs, and that means I could have missed some really major evidence because I can't flip through and make sure I've hit every page. If I've missed something, major or minor, put it in the comments so if anyone references this video, they'll have an encyclopedia of evidence to look to. Thank you so much for watching. I have been Candy Bunny, and I have candy all day. Candy, candy, candy.